Hi there Booktube, it's Eleanor here and it's time for Friday Reads. So I had a really good reading week this week. It included some good books, some mediocre books and a book I DNF'd, which you may have been able to tell from the thumbnail. But before we get into those, it's time for my weekly Booktuber shout out. This week I want to shout out a Booktuber called Denise Marie and I will link her channel down below. I've really enjoyed finding her channel. She does lots of different types of videos. She does discussion videos, she does recommendations, she does top 5 Wednesdays, she reads a wide range of books. She's just really interesting and engaging to watch, and I've really enjoyed getting to know her channel and getting to know her reading tastes and discovering authors that I might not have otherwise. So I definitely recommend checking out her channel, showing her some love as we all like to do, because it's always good to find new booktubers. The more the merrier in my opinion. So go check out Denise Marie and show her some love if you like what you see, and subscribe. And as I say, I will link her down below so that it's easy for you to find her. Okay, so let's look at the DNF book first. Unfortunately, this week I picked up A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara with a lovely group of booktubers to buddy read. And I got about 200 pages in, and if I'm honest, I was bored and I was feeling slumpy, and I just felt like it was a very long meander with very overwritten characters, and I just felt it was taking too long to get to the point of the story, which is one of our main characters. Basically, the story is about a group of young men that have got to know each other at university, and then we follow their life excuse me, we follow their life through a number of decades and their friendships and their careers. And the main crux of the story is that Jude, one of the young men, has obviously had a troubled past. He doesn't talk about his life before he met the other boys at 15, and we know something's happened, and I knew from rumour and review that, you know, there's some sort of abuse gone on there, but I just felt like if it was meant to be sort of a building up maybe to that, and I didn't even get to much of Jude's story, and I was bored and I was feeling slumpy, and I've made a promise to myself that if a book is really not doing it for me, and it was that, you know, I was getting to the stage where I personally read at least 100 pages of a book a day, and I feel that draw to reading. You know, when I'm doing other things, I'm thinking I can't wait till I get to sit down and read, and I just didn't want to read. I didn't want to pick up the book. I didn't want to read it, and I was just doing anything else but reading, and that is a sure sign for me that the book just isn't for me. And yeah, it just wasn't for me, and so I put it down, and I don't think I'll pick it back up. So unfortunately, bit of a letdown for me, but I hear people love it, so don't go by my my views. It just wasn't for me, and I wasn't feeling it. However, a book I did feel was First Frost by Sarah Addison Allen. So full disclosure here, I received this via the publisher, via Bookbridger, and this is the sequel to Garden Spells by Sarah Addison Allen that I read a couple of weeks ago and really enjoyed. They are contemporary magical realism, romance, women's fiction, I don't know what you like to call them. They're just light, lovely contemporary stories. I won't tell you much about this one because it might spoil the first one, but in Garden Spells we meet the Waverley family. We meet two sisters who have been estranged. The Waverley family have a sort of mystical, magical relationship with the apple tree in their garden, where the plants and flowers and fruit and vegetables that grow around it can produce emotional feelings and senses of things, and make people reveal secrets cooked into certain foods. And it's a really beautiful, lovely story. And First Frost picks up about 8 years or so later, I think, when we go back and see the family. And I don't want to say any more because I don't want to spoil it if you haven't read the first one, but it was well worth a read. I really enjoyed it and I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read, I rounded up the Reckoners series, the Reckoners trilogy with Calamity, which is by Brandon Sanderson. The first book is Steelheart, the second Firefight, and Calamity is the third and final book in this trilogy. I've really enjoyed this trilogy. It was a nice surprise for me because I didn't like Mistborn, and so I was determined to try some more Brandon Sanderson, and when I picked up Steelheart I was pleasantly surprised. It's a story about an event that has happened, leaving some of the population with superpowers, but these superpowers don't make them heroes. They corrupt them. The more they use them, the more they corrupt their minds, the more power hungry and greedy they become, and therefore they become dictators, and they rule over people, and they are mean. And there is a group called the Reckoners, who are regular human beings who are out to stop the epics, as they're called, which are the sort of superpowered beings, and they look to find their weaknesses to take them down. And the story progresses. We follow David, and he becomes a reckoner, and we just follow him and his motley band of crew, and it's just fun and fast paced. And this one was just as good as the others and really rounded off the series nicely, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was a total surprise for me. I picked up The Honours by Tim Clare. This was a buddy read with a number of booktubers and my friend Jackie, who is a subscriber to my channel and also someone that I love buddy reading with. We read The Count of Monte Cristo together. We're going to read The Three Musketeers next month, and I love buddy reading with her. And we read this, and it was a surprise. Firstly, the back of the book describes it as it's set in 1935, so you think, okay, it's set around the sort of World War, and it says it's about a secret society and a young girl that goes to stay at this hall with her unstable father and her mother, and she discovers secrets. So I'm thinking, oh, you know, maybe spies or mystery. Oh, hell no. This is fantasy, and the first half of the book you're still thinking, I don't know what's going on, and is it fantasy, is it not fantasy, and I wouldn't tell you normally because it might spoil things a bit, but I think it would be very disappointing if you went into this book thinking that it was a contemporary story when it's not. So it is fantasy. It's a fantasy story. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say what is fantasy, but that it is a fantasy story. And it really took turns. There was one part in this book that physically made me feel sick. It involved, I can't think about it now without getting itchy. It involved boils and pustules and maggots. Oh, no, I can't. It makes me feel really funny. Oh, you know when you talk about those things you get really itchy heads, and oh no, right, so I'm not going to talk about it. But there was some really gruesome bits in this. Oh, but it was really fun. I couldn't put it down. I read this in 2 days. I just wanted to read it all the time, and it's such beautiful writing. Tim Clare's prose is really beautiful, and some really beautiful imagery in there. So basically the story is about Delphine. She's 13. We don't quite know what's going on with her father, but he's an artist and he is troubled in some way, and her mother is not really a very good parent. Delphine's got in some trouble at boarding school, and all 3 of them are going to this sort of country estate to stay with this man that I think her father sort of knew in the war, and hopefully to get her father some help. So they've gone to stay in this hall. Delphine's really left to her own devices to just wander around and do as she sees fit, and she's not your average girly girl. She likes guns, and she's interested in warfare and poisons and spies, and she thinks everyone's a Bolshevik, and she finds secret passages, and she starts rooting around in people's affairs, and she comes up with conclusions about things, some of which are true, some of which aren't true. She forms an unlikely relationship with the groundskeeper, who is really very much a father figure for her, and oh, it was just really good. And it ended in a way that it could be the end, but there could be room for a sequel, and I really hope there is, because it was just so much fun, and I gave this one a really solid 4 stars. And then the final book that I completed this week was The Book Collector by Alice Thompson. I read this book in 3 hours and I did not get up. Now I know I read a lot, and I know that everyone's always like, wow, you read so much, but I do take breaks. I tend to find snippets in the day to read. I'll sit for 40 minutes and read quite happily, but then I want to get up and do something and then sit back down again later. I sat for about 2.5, 3 hours and solidly read this book. I just really gobbled it up and I really enjoyed it. It's a very short book. It's only 159 pages. I was reading this with the lovely Jean from Jean's Bookish Thoughts and with Brittany from Under the Radar Books, and I really loved the story. In the first half of the book there was a real sense of tension and unrest and unease, and you felt really uncomfortable, and you wanted it to sort of resolve itself, and you wanted to know what was going on, and unfortunately after the sort of the first half we lost that, so that's why I didn't end up giving it 5 stars, because we sort of lost that tension. But it was a bit predictable what happened, but I found it a really fast story with a really interesting premise. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and it's about a young girl who's 19 and she meets a man who owns a bookshop, and he's obsessed with books, and they end up having a whirlwind romance and getting married, and they have a baby, and it's about her, and she's stuck in this house with the baby, and he's working a lot, and I can't really say more than that because I don't want to ruin it because it is such a short book, but it's about, it looks at asylums, it looks at mental illness, it looks at hysteria amongst women in this time. It's set in Edwardian England, there's a bit of murder mystery in there, and suspense and fairy tales and books, and yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it, and I gave it a really solid 4 stars. So that's all the books that I finished this week. There's 2 books that I am hoping to finish over the next few days. The first is Barbara the Slut and Other People by Lauren Holmes. I'm reading this with the lovely Brittany from Under the Radar Books. This week is sort of from Monday to Sunday, so in 2 days time we'll be trying to finish up, but it doesn't matter if we go over a bit. Me and Brittany had so many buddy reads we wanted to do this month that we decided to do a bit of a readathon just for the 2 of us. So The Honours was one of those books, The Book Collector was the other, and now we've got Barbara the Slut by Lauren Holmes and The Moon Dwellers by David Estes. This is the first book in a quartet, I think it is, which is sort of a dystopian story, and this is a contemporary story looking at slut shaming, and yeah, I'm looking forward to both of these. Both going to be 2 very different books, but I'm looking forward to chatting to Brittany about these as we read them. And that's what I've read, what I'm looking to read next week. What have you read? Have you read any of these? What are your views on them? Let's chat in the comments as always, and don't forget to check out Denise Marie because her channel is great. Okay, I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now, Booktube.